All right. Thank you, Liz, and thank you for having me here. This is an important topic to me. I think it does make a big difference on the quality of life, just getting past financial stress in life. A lot of people are under a lot of financial stress for many different reasons. Some could be circumstances, some could be just things that happen, or it could be bad decisions. But no matter what the reason, we all want to get out from that stress of financial. So you gave a little bit of my background, but just to give a little bit more so you know what perspective I'm coming from. As a kid, our family didn't have a whole lot of money. We basically lived off the land. We grew our garden. We were in the woods, a town of 35 people, and there just wasn't extra money for things. And we learned um, a good life. It was a very good life, but not a whole lot of money. And we didn't talk a lot about money. And I think it was primarily because my parents didn't want us to stress that we didn't have any. So we didn't talk a lot about it. And then in my early, actually just before my 20s, I got married and we were in major debt, a lot of debt, and talk about financial stress. We didn't even have enough to heat, the house in the winter in Pennsylvania. So it was cold. And a lot of things had to change in order for that to change. And I think one of the biggest things that made a difference was my mindset had to change. How I thought about so many different things had to change. So if you don't like the direction your life is going, often the first thing you have to change is your mind. And so the first thing I want to talk about today is just some key mindsets that can help us have a little bit less financial stress. And then I want to talk specifically about the impact of debt on our finances. So the mindset, and I'm not a person who will say, if you put good out in the world, it'll come back to you. I think that there is some validity to that, but I'm not going to tell you if you think about money, it'll come to you. I don't believe that. What I do believe is that how we think about money and how we think about ourselves is what drives our decisions about money. So ultimately, what we think and what we believe will make a big difference. So the three things that I want to share with you, and I'm going to just put this up on the screen because it's so much easier to visualize what we're talking about. So really want to get real about financial freedom. And I talked about, when I was a kid, we were poor and then I was in a lot of debt. And now my husband and I are free. We are financially free. We left our corporate job 6 years ago and we travel full time. How did that happen? What happened in between all of that debt and now? And some of it's mundane and hard work. But I want to talk through a little bit about that. And your story is not going to be the same as my story. No two stories are alike. All I ask is that you pull from this the things that you can glean. 2 plus 2 will always equal 4, even if your shirt is red and mine is blue. Our lives are going to be different, but there's certain things that really hold true for everyone. So the first thing I want to talk about is let's actually get real about, is it possible? If you're under financial stress, is it possible for you to get out? So first thing I always say is whatever you believe, base it on facts. So let's look at some facts. There was a massive survey done for over 10,000 millionaires, and they asked them a number of questions. And some of the outcome was surprising. In fact, 79% of millionaires inherited absolutely nothing from parents or families. And 98% of them came from middle to lower income families. So please don't say, well, I wasn't born into it, I'll never get it, because 98% of millionaires weren't born into it either. So get that out of your mind, that it's not, you weren't, it's not genetic. So that's one fact to remember. The other thing to remember is what they said. So always listen to the people who've actually done it, not to the people around you who are saying it cannot be done. Find a way to reduce your financial stress. And I always say, as long as you have breath to breathe, you can improve your financial situation. The two things that these 10,000 millionaires said that impacted their wealth was one, financial discipline, and two, consistent savings. So those two things were the biggest differentiators in those. And I remember as you make decisions and thinking about those 10,000 millionaires, that they somehow did something that got them out of their lower to middle income to something else. So maybe your goal is not to be a millionaire. Not everyone wants to be a millionaire, and that's fine. Maybe your goal is just to be out of financial stress. Quite honestly, when I was back in that room with ice on my walls in the winter, all I wanted to do was be able to heat my bedroom. And maybe you have goals like that. So the first thing I want to talk about is the mindset. Our mindset, the purpose is the first mindset I want to talk about. What is your purpose? And purpose is not a goal, it's the reason behind your goals. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a company that makes tennis balls has, you know how you buy tennis balls in this package that you have three balls in it and there's lots of air around it, but it's just this clear packaging. And so they decided, let's see if we can figure out a way to package this more efficiently. And they had separated all their employees into teams and they had a contest. The goal was to find a way to package these the most efficient way. Who can fit the most tennis balls in the packaging? So one team got a bunch of tennis balls, sliced them all in half, stacked them inside each other, and fit a bunch of tennis balls in that same packaging. They won the goal and they forgot the purpose because nobody's going to buy that thing of tennis balls. So that is purpose. We have to understand what it is we want to accomplish. I watched a movie quite some time ago about a billionaire. His entire goal was to be a billionaire. And he did everything possible to become a billionaire, and it happened. But along the way, he ostracized every person in his life. And it was really a sad movie because he became a billionaire, but was one of the saddest people you could ever meet. So often we set financial goals and forget that it's not the money that's going to fulfill us. So keeping that in mind, and one way to do a litmus test on what your ultimate goal is, often money, it's not the actual money that people want, it's freedom from stress. It's what the money can buy, what they think it can buy, what they think it can give them, prestige or whatever. Keeping that in mind helps us balance the frenetic goals of just trying to get, and it keeps it as a journey. The purpose is something we do now and tomorrow. It's not happiness that we will get 10 years down the road when we're financial independent. So that's the purpose. The second mindset is contentment. And contentment, I know some people will say, yes, but you've got to always be, finding where to improve. I agree. And sometimes being discontent will spur you on to make a change. And that is true. But contentment is different than complacency and discontentment. Discontentment can be useful for helping us to make a change. But for the most part, we need to be content with what we have. And buying something else is not going to make us content. Being grateful for what we have helps us. And having contentment impacts our finances because we're not trying to buy our contentment, because it can't be bought. And that helps us in our purpose and being satisfied. There are a lot of people I see that buy and buy and buy because they want it now. They hope it'll make them happier. And this is going to tie directly into what I show you later about debt and being content with what you have. So I want to make a clear difference, though, between contentment and complacency. Complacency makes us sit beside the road and watch life go by. It's not for me. I can't do it. It's fine. I'll just live life as it is. Complacency surrenders us to the will of everybody else around us. This is the job. I guess I got to do it. You know, my boss is mean, but what can I do? You get another job. So complacency is different than contentment. Contentment is satisfaction with the journey, even as we're striving to better things. And contentment moderates our journey. I have known people that have their whole goal is to retire early. And the reason why they want to retire early is to reduce the stress in their life. And in the journey of getting to financial independence, they're working 10 jobs, and just it's insane, and their stress level is way up here. And I'm like, if your whole purpose of getting there is to reduce stress and you're compounding your stress now, I don't see the point. It's a journey, and contentment with what we have and knowing how wealthy we are in the United States, and just having food on our table and a roof over our head, we are wealthy, and understanding and seeing that is a big thing. And the third mindset that I want to talk about is generosity and giving. And I know it seems like such a like, why would you talk about giving when you're trying to save money and get out of financial stress? And there's a couple reasons. One is it helps us keep in mind that money is a tool. It is only a tool to help feed, clothe, house, help. It's not something that will actually make us happy. It's now, granted, if you have ice on your wall and no food for dinner, it's very, very helpful to have money. But when you get past that point and you actually have enough, you do have to use it as a tool. And giving helps us actually develop gratefulness and contentment with what we have. When we're helping others in need, we actually see how great a need there is in the world, and we become in turn more grateful. And there's also a scientific study done that looked at people's brains and what lit up when they gave. And there's actually two parts of the brain. One is the part of the brain that lights up when, like, major pleasure, when we are eating something we really enjoy. And they noticed in this study that when people gave, it was those areas of the brain that lit up. So it helps us develop gratefulness. And if we are content, it also helps us to moderate our spending. So those are the mindsets that I wanted to talk about. And now I wanted to give some specific examples of how that mindset, we can use it in actual dollars. So I want to share my screen and go into this presentation and show you just a quick snapshot of what reducing financial stress can look like. So on the one side, we have the red block, and that's our expenses, however much our expenses cost. And then on the other side, we have the green, which is income. The interesting thing is most people know what their income is. Many people don't know what their expense is. So, in the difference between the two, that little gap that you can see there in the brackets, that's what's going to give us freedom in our expenses and freedom to save and more freedom as we go along. So my goal today, after you do this, if you don't know what your expenses are, I highly encourage you to find out. Knowledge will help you on your journey to financial freedom. And if you don't know what your expenses are, then how do you tackle what you need to tackle? So I'm going to talk a little bit about expenses, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about income, because the way to build that gap in the middle, you can either reduce expenses or you can increase income. And then with that gap in the middle, if you're saving it or investing it, that's what's going to build your future financial freedom. So let's talk about expenses, because that can really get us sometime. And I want to talk about the art of waiting. So I want to also mention at the end of this, there will be an email that you'll get with a workbook. And that workbook is just something very simple where you can start to write down your expenses. For many, this is the most difficult step to get started on because it's scary. If you don't know what your expenses are, pulling out your credit card statement to look at the little chart or your bank statement to look at the chart, that's scary for a lot of people. So take it one step at a time. Write yourself a goal list. Hey, I'm just going to pull the reports today and print this paper. That's it. Make it easy. The next day, sit down with a glass of wine or your favorite piece of chocolate, whatever, and start putting it together and make a goal of just figuring out what it is. After you figure it out, then decide on how real you need to get about debt or reducing expenses. So the contentment and debt, I want to give you an example of Aiden and Laundry. Aiden and Laundry both want a new bedroom set. The bedroom set costs $3,500. Now, just to make this same, even playing field, let's say Aiden and Landry, they both work 40 hours a week. They have the same rate of pay. They share an apartment and they split the expenses equally. Both of them have a net worth of zero. So they're both in the same exact spot. And funny enough, they want the same bedroom set. This is just for example. So they both make a different decision. Aiden decides he needs it now. He needs it today. So he goes down to the furniture store. He gets on a payment plan. It's about a 10% interest. And he pays $121 a month for 36 months. And he's paid for his bedroom set. He had it on day one. Laundry said, you know what? I'm content with what I have now. I'm going to go on the same thing and set aside 121 a month into my own bank account. And I'm going to wait for 20 months to come up with and pay cash for this bedroom set. So in the middle of this, although Aiden has had a nice bedroom set for a while, Laundry then goes down at month 21 and he pays cash. He set aside the same exact amount every month, but now he pays cash. Between month 21 and 36, he continues to put aside the 121 in, say, a savings account or some investment, and gets just 2% interest. At 36 months, when Aiden has paid off his bedroom set, he has a net worth of zero and a bedroom set. Laundry has a net worth at that same month of almost $2,000 and a bedroom set, all because he waited. So the art of waiting, if you find that your expenses are above your income or close to, and you need to bring in some more wiggle room in there, the art of waiting can really buy you some time. That's $2,000 that Aiden doesn't have because he couldn't wait. The art of waiting. Now, it's not a matter of just sitting there and waiting for something to happen. They both made a decision. Sometimes not making a decision is the worst thing that you can do. It's the biggest time waster in business is just waiting for something to happen. They both made a decision. Laundry made a decision to save that money in his own account and pay cash. The beautiful thing about doing that is you have 21 months for that set to go on sale too, and you might get it cheaper, but it may or may not. But that's the art of waiting. And a lot of times we don't think about that when we're thinking about how much we're paying in interest on our debt. Wouldn't it be better for us to retain that interest instead of giving it to somebody else? So, working on our debt, paying down, there's a few other things that we can do within our expenses. And let's say you have your debt paid off or you don't have it paid off yet. One of the key things is, if you don't have one, build a life fund. Now, some people call this an emergency fund. I call it a life fund because if you have, start with 1 month's worth of expenses saved up, start with that. Then eventually build up as you're paying off your debt, build up to 2 and maybe 3 months. And the purpose of this savings account is for things that happen in life, like when your tire blows or things happen. I call it a life fund, not an emergency fund, because if you don't have it, a blown tire is an emergency. If you do have it, it's not, because you can pay for another tire. The other thing about not having this life fund is you often pay more when something like that happens. If you can't afford to buy a discount tire that requires cash, and maybe not for tires, but for other things, like my husband and I, for cars, we have gotten to the point where we pay cash for cars and we buy them from individuals off of Craigslist. Now, to get to that point, we had to build savings. Before I had enough savings, I had no choice but to go down to a dealership and pay and get a loan. So if I needed a loan for something, I have to pay more for it and get a loan. So having that life fund helps reduce the stress and reduces the amount of emergencies that we have. When you know you have enough savings for if something goes wrong, it really does reduce the stress. So have that life fund. And then after you build that, burn down that debt and build this fund, start saving. If you're working, have a 401k that your company offers, please at least match the 401k. Otherwise, you're basically saying you don't have to give me my entire paycheck. If they tell you that if you put in $200, they match it, you automatically have $400. There's nowhere you can get that kind of interest rate to immediately double your money. So at least do the minimum match, even if you're not out of debt yet. The other thing with expenses, and there's a million personal finance blogs out there that will tell you all kinds of tips and tricks. Don't pay fees, negotiate your bills. Today, actually, specifically today, I negotiated a bill and saved $160. We had a dental thing. My husband had something dental done, and basically they told us it was covered. It wasn't, yada, yada. I called them and said, we wouldn't have done this if you told us, basically I negotiated with them and they said, yeah, you're right. We'll just, you don't have to pay the extra. Talk to them. If you're consistently paying your credit card and 1 month, you know how it happens, 1 month you forget, and then you get the late fee, you get the interest, you get all these things, call and tell them, hey, I've been paying on time this whole time. Can you, give forgiveness this one time? And they normally do if you've been consistently paying. So go after, your monthly bills, reduce your cell phone. If your income is close to your expense or your expense is over, you are in an emergency, and do everything you can to reduce that. Once you get it down and you build that life fund, then you can be a little bit more free. But I would honestly, what one of the things I did, and I said I'd get back into this, how did I get from debt to financial freedom? I went through a period of extreme get rid of extreme financial nothing extra. Cut your own hair. Don't get your nails done. I didn't buy any clothes. Went to the thrift store if I absolutely needed something. And honestly, I still do a lot of those things, even though I'm financially free. But it's an emergency if that's close, and do everything you can to build in a cushion. And then it's not forever that you have to cut drastically, but it is an emergency if you're that close. And your future self will thank you if you reduce that first financial stress. The other thing you can do is build income if you want that gap. And one of my roles previously in corporate was a director. So I had a number of employees, and it always, it was always frustrating when I would see an employee say, "Oh, I'm not going to do that because that's above my pay grade." And then when it came time for roundtable and we were talking about who we wanted to give a raise to, I'd bring up this employee, and basically the executive team says, "No, they don't do more than what they're paid for. We're not going to pay them more." So sometimes you have to give before you get. You have to be a valuable employee. And there's many things about that. And this is very light and just a little bit on the number side, but really that mindset of giving goes into how you are as an employee, how you want to spend your money. Contentment allows you to wait and save a whole lot of money. And knowing what your purpose in all of that is really helps throughout the whole journey, because there will be times, months, sometimes years that are extremely difficult. And knowing what your purpose is throughout the journey will actually help encourage you through it, because you know there's a purpose. And it also will help moderate so that you're just not somehow going after this goal that doesn't really get you where you want to get to. So, building your income, whether you're working more hours, educating yourself, looking for another job, and education doesn't necessarily even have to be college education. My career was not in what my college degree was. And a lot of it was self-education along the way. So there's many things you can do, but I really want today from my story to share the fact that just because you may be in financial stress today, things can change. And changing the way you think about it and knowing that it can happen, it is a big deal and can make a huge difference within your life. So that's what I wanted to share today. And Luz, I'll hand it back over to you. And I think we're going to open it up for some questions. And just so you know, this background, my husband and I are on the road traveling. So it's 10 o'clock at night here. So I'm downstairs in the kitchen to not disturb people upstairs. And sometimes we just never know where we're going to end up as we travel. So Luz, back to you. Let's open it up for some questions.